Welcome to Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, a conversation held at the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and everyday living. Your hosts, Mark Regala and Justin Wolf, bring both professional expertise and personal understanding to the table. So welcome to the conversation. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. I'm your co-host, Mark Regala. I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Wolf. Justin, how you doing this evening?
Doing fantastic, Mark. Just happy to be here with you.
Awesome. So last week, the last podcast that we did, you interviewed me, and I was able to share my story with our audience. Today, we're going to reverse the roles, and I'm going to be interviewing you. So I'm looking forward to that. Justin and I have been working together for the last couple of years. We actually help facilitate a dual diagnosis group at the NAMI office on the first and third Tuesday of the month. I know a little bit of Justin's story, but I don't know all of it, so I'm really excited to hear his story today. I know that he's actually a clinical director at a treatment facility in suburban Chicago, and I know he lives with the dual diagnosis, but I don't know much besides that. So, Justin, where did it all start? And if you can share a little bit of your story, that would be great.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. And let's just hope after I'm done sharing my story today with you that you're still willing to talk with me and call me a friend. So
that'll be for debate.
Yeah, isn't it always? No. So where does it all start? And I think that's a great place to kind of begin because myself, just like everybody else that we kind of talk to, right? Like it doesn't start with just like picking up the drink or going and kind of like falling down this rabbit hole of addiction. It starts much, much earlier than that, before any use has even occurred. And so for me, that thing that always kind of was always sitting there for me. Like I've always been somebody who has, what you would call ADHD. And my mind is constantly like always going. And so that hypervigilance was always there. And I don't think really kind of growing up and moving every couple years really helped feed that, where you always had to kind of be like the new kid and have to figure out where do I fit in, who's going to be my friends, and da-da-da-da. Because you're always like, I found myself having to like re-identify who I am and kind of find who is it that's like safe and who's cool to hang out with and what, so on and so forth, because I didn't have any background with these people. Like I just constantly had to, in a sense, I always felt like I had to prove myself that I was worth it. And one of the things like that when I was younger, that really kind of, as I got older, I kind of picked up on this. It's that I always played sports, just constantly year round. I was fortunate to be pretty gifted athletically. And the part that comes with that I really kind of started picking up on as I got older is that my mind was very obsessive. And like, this was something that sports just really brought out in me, where it was just always do this, work on this. You got to push yourself. If you're not working hard, somebody's working harder than you. And this game of comparison of where I'm at versus where is everybody else at, and really wanting to just be at the top of that mountain. And that really set up this, like, I don't know, being like your own worst critic is really what I found myself being, where it's like, hey, that was good, but it could have been better. And so I never really felt that comfortable or ever felt like I really achieved something, even though I was like, as I got older into high school and you start getting phone calls and letters and people start to talk and like they know who you are. And it's like, that's cool. And that feeds your ego and that makes you feel great. And at the core of it, it's just like, well, if you really knew who I was, like, I'm still not worthy, right? I'm still not enough until I've achieved these great, grand, and wonderful goals and objectives I've set for myself. And so that's where like this critic, it's awesome in sports because, right, it's like highlighting these things you can keep working on. But off the field, it doesn't work out well. It's not a really effective long-term plan for somebody to feel like content or satisfied with where they are in their life. And like, that was something that really I struggled with. And so for me to feel like I was okay, I had to have all these like check boxes that I was kind of like doing, where it's like I'm playing sports, I've got a girlfriend. That lets me know like, hey, socially, I'm kind of good. I'm taken care of. But once I had an injury in sports and my arm couldn't really work the same way that it used to for baseball, I was just lost. And then it's just kind of down this rabbit hole. Like, this is who I've been and this is what I've done. And if I don't have this, what good am I now? And who the hell am I going to be? And so that was something that just sent me spiraling, because that was the thing that kind of kept me walking like a straight and narrow path. Like, I could go to parties in high school. I drank a couple times, but nothing excessive, nothing really, like just like silly stuff. Like, I found my parents' bottle of wine in the fridge and I would drink it, and we'd fill it with water. You know what I mean? Like, and that was like a 1-2 time thing, nothing crazy. Because in the back of my head is like, hey, I have to be in season. I can't go down that road because it's going to cost me something I really love and really care about, and something that actually makes me feel good. And then without that, it was kind of like the wheels came off. And I remember kind of going down to Arizona to a local community college with a buddy of mine. And it was awesome because here I am in this nice, really like where whatever you want, whenever you want it, you could get your hands on. And the people I started associating with all of a sudden now weren't my usual group of friends. These weren't people that were kind of really like, athletically driven or goal motivated. Different goals, different agendas. It's like, hey, now the goal all of a sudden became, because I went out and played baseball and coach like, hey, something's wrong with your arm, man. You might want to go get that checked out. I'm like, I know it's wrong. Like, my arm doesn't work like it used to. My labrum's gone. Got it. I'm not getting surgery. So here I am in this Southwest part of the country, and I don't really know people outside of my roommate, and I've got access to funds because I got credit cards. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go from being a full-time junior college student who was supposed to be playing baseball down here to a part-time student. And all of a sudden I go from taking 18 credits, like 6 credits. I got all this free time in my hands. And so I start hanging around with guys that I meet at the gym, people that I meet just kind of going out. I was like working at Abercrombie back then too. So I'm like meeting people there and just kind of going out. And like, I just started living like this college party lifestyle where it's like, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to have a good time, I'm going to go hard, and then we'll just figure it out from there. And so drinking, smoking, and all that just became became part of like my daily routine. And the one thing that was always there that made me feel like I had it together was that, hey, I'm working out still. I'm still attending to like that part of me that's an athlete. And I still would feel good about that, but it was all vanity. It was all to feed my ego. It was all to make me feel good. And so I ended up taking soccer down in Arizona as just like a joke blow-off class. I'm like, hey, I played soccer in high school. I was like all conference a couple times. And I'm like, you know what, this will be fun. This will just be a good time. And so like, it was actually the college coach is like, hey, do you want to come and play on our team? I also coach the soccer team. I don't run this soccer class at the junior college. And so at that point, I'm like, lights went off. I'm like, thank God I can go back to being an athlete again, because now I'm back in something that's comfortable, because this feeling of just not being that same person that I believe that I always was just shattered me. And it really was shattering. And so like I dove into that. But one thing I kept doing at that point, like I cut back on my drinking, but I found that like I was just smoking weed all the time. And that was something that was just totally, you would talk to like younger me, high school me, and that would just be totally out of character. And I would never go down that road. And here I am doing this on a regular basis on weekends, drinking and smoking and not remembering my name and putting myself in these high risk situations, like driving, going God knows where, waking up in places that I don't remember going to, and having to like run the credit card, like check my credit card history and be like, where was I? What did we do? What happened? And then one night when I was playing soccer, and we had a soccer party where it was like at the coach's house, and nothing crazy, but we all got together, and my buddy that like I hung out with, like he was on the baseball team down at the community college, and that's how we knew each other. He's having a party at his house, and like, cool. Like when I get out of this party, like when I'm just done, like socializing with people and not drinking or doing anything, I'll be over there and be ready. And the last thing I remember from that night was him and I just starting to take shots. And that night was October 10th of 2004. And that's the night that I drove my car into a pole in Maricopa County in Scottsdale, Arizona. And for years, I tell myself, like, I wasn't the driver. They found me in the back seat. There's no way I was driving. I was in a fight. I had like 14 or 15 scars on my knuckles, right? Like and I got a scar down my forehead and a scar on my neck. Like, there's no way I was the driver. Of course I was the driver. But that was part of like the story I was kind of like narrating in my own head to kind of make me feel okay that because I would never do that, right? And so I ended up having, like, as a result of that car accident, I suffered a traumatic brain injury. I spent 3 weeks in Scottsdale Rehabilitation Hospital. I was in a coma for 3 days. And if you ever seen 50 First Dates, I was Drew Barrymore for about a good year and a half before my short-term memory started to work. And so thinking that was like, hey, that would be the end of it. Like, it's like, bro, like you almost cost you your life. Like at the scene, they had to cut off my clothes and put me on like life support and all these like horrific stories. Like my parents would tell me this. And so that's when like, I didn't really grasp how severe what had happened, what had transpired. Like it just didn't register with me. And I remember reading like doctor's notes. Like this is one of the things, and I ended up throwing out all my paperwork from like the hospital because I never wanted to see that, right? I didn't want to be reminded that I did this or I let this happen. But I remember reading it. It's like, he has no idea how severe this is. Like it would just like made it sound like I was in La La Land, believing that the world's full of rainbows, sunshine, and like gumdrops. And I remember, being at home and just kind of going through like my parents' closet. Cause I would do that on occasion to look for spare change. Now the word's out. But, I remember going in there and there's like this bag. I'm like, what is in this bag? Like, this is new. This is different. Why are clothes in this bag? And I opened this bag and I remember, because this is the moment like just shame hit me. It was the clothes I was wearing in that accident, covered in blood. My parents held on to those. And that was the moment that I just felt like the worst possible person in this world to cause that level of pain to people that Neil say like didn't deserve it, but to see that I had done that, right? And you would think like all this stuff is just like, it's going to get this guy walking on like that straight and narrow. No, I just wanted to get away from me. Like that's what this was all about for me. Like, how do I solve the problem? I always tell these people in like treatment, like, yeah, you're just trying to solve the problem of being you. Like, and for me, it was, I just don't want to be me. I want to be anywhere else except in my own head and in my own body. And I found a really effective way to do that. And so I just really kind of dove into that. It'd be like late at night, dark, like just sitting in a room, just drinking or pretending that I'm not drinking. Cause that was always a fun game for me. Like, are you drunk? Have you been drinking tonight? No, of course not. I would never do that. Why would you think that? And it was just like this really, twisted game that I'm like, I just want to figure out how I can squash this pain and this shame of who I am and try all these ways. And that's what I found to be really effective. And it's like the number of bars I got kicked out of, the number of things I did to my friends and said to my friends and didn't show up, and how unreliable I was as a person, all these horrific things. Like it just was bottled up. Like it was just all this hurt that was just kind of like spewing from me. And I don't think I was a really likable person at that time. I mean, I saw people that would want to be around me, and it didn't make sense to me because I was really good at pushing people away. And it wasn't until they got me into therapy because like talking about emotions and feelings, like that was just something like I didn't do, nor would I ever imagine. I always tell people like, I'm a therapist. Like, could you imagine this? Like, oh my God, you do what? Yeah. And so diving into therapy and finding like having a therapist kind of make sense of this to me, like push me down this path of just like, he made sense of it. Like, he's like, you like things can be different, right? He's like, your brain is still healing, and it takes about 2 years for that healing to occur. So you're not going to really see the full benefit of everything that's going on with you until about 2 years. And I remember that. And I went like from taking colleges and failing to going back to Arizona State because I convinced my family to send me back down to ASU, to the scene of the accident, only to get locked up. So there was a warrant for my arrest for the accident I was in, for a DUI that I had no idea about. No idea, because I never changed my license when I lived down there. So it got sent to my old address. So that was a fun phone call to have to make. Especially when you just moved and you have a new phone number, you don't know what the number is, and you got to ask people that are also in that cell with you to call somebody that they love, to call this old number to get that number. Yeah, that was fun. Or calling your friend's family because you memorized their number and they got a collect call from somebody in Maricopa County. That's always great. Mark. So that just doesn't feel well. And so I realized it was a long journey for me to kind of get to this place where I could sit with myself and be okay with this person that was looking at me, because I had a myriad of reasons why I just wasn't enough. And so for me, I get really good at acting and pretending as if like things are fantastic and I got it all together. But I always know that when I'm at my best, I'm in a stable, consistent relationship. Unfortunately, I got my wife. So, that's kind of like all the main bullet points. And it's like, hey, once you see that you've got somebody else in your life that makes it worth it, and you start having children, and you're like, why am I holding on to alcohol? Why do I want to keep going down the road where it's like, I'm not doing this because I enjoy the flavor or that I'm like an IPA guy. No, I was doing it with one intention. I just want to get out of my head. Like I could be there and just remember be like, who kills 2 bottles of wine on a date? Who goes and rips sake bombs on a first date? Like, what kind of guy does that?
How did you, did you have to go through treatment to beat the alcohol then, or?
So for me, there was like an ongoing battle. And I think that's where I always tell people like, hey, everybody's journey is different. For me, I ended up having to do an IOP program. Okay. It just didn't make sense to me. Like I didn't understand what I was doing there. I didn't understand what it actually entailed. Like nobody described it to me. And I just walk in and people are just talking. And I'm just like, okay. I never got drug tested. I had to take a handwritten test to kind of test out of this. And so going there, like it did a great job for that day, making me not want to drink. And I remember getting like invitations like, oh, these people want to go out tonight. Like I'm game. And then I go to this program and they're like, yeah, not tonight. Cause as much as I hate to admit, like I'm a really emotionally like sensitive person. And so those are things that like early on, like I figured like, hey, it's sometimes not really safe to be that emotional, like that sensitive, because you just get hurt. And so you find ways to kind of mask it and cover it up. And that's what I did throughout the years with like humor. And I became a really big like class clown. And what I ended up doing is like I would just project it onto other people, right? Though it's saying like hurt people. And then so going into treatment, like that didn't really change it. But then what would get me to stop drinking? Because there's always I always find a reason to keep doing it. You know what I mean? Like, dude, it's Monday night. Like, everybody hates Mondays. This can make it better. Or it's Friday night. I'm just waiting for that clock to tick, and then let's go. And then Saturday, let's rinse, repeat, and recycle. And then Sunday, it's like I'm just going to recover from these past couple of days because God knows what damage I just did. But for me, it was having a committed relationship and actually being invested, seeing like, hey, I had enough relationships get ruined because of drinking and the way I would act while I was drinking. And then I'm like, if I actually want to see this through and have it work and actually show up as like a reliable and consistent, dependable like partner, alcohol can't be a part of my life because it's going to try and rob all that from me. So it was it was a trial and error thing. It's like, and then once you have kids, I'm like, really? Cause like, what am I doing with myself? Like, why? Right? Like my values change. My idea of like saying, hey man, get out of your own egotistical way of just fixated on you and what it is that you want, what it is that you believe that you need, because there's damage being done here.
So, I mean, how long do you think like your addiction, like the addiction period of alcoholism last? I mean, I didn't realize that this took you into your marriage and until you became a young father.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where it's like, God, like 31.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you figure out how do I kind of like keep this in a box, right? Because like, I'd say, was I out there doing it every day? Mm-mm. But when I did it,
Yeah.
you know, and that's what I remember. I took this like alcohol class in college, and I'm like, this is interesting because I'm just interested in this, you know, like because everybody's got this image of like what it means and what it looks like, but I know at the core of it, like just such an unhealthy attachment I had to it, and such a thing that I'm like, she doesn't like me when I'm doing this. Like I don't like me when I'm doing this. I don't like the way I act or the way I behave. Like this isn't going to work out if I keep this in my life. And kind of looking at like, and having kids, you're like, what do I want them to remember? I've worked in enough treatment programs with enough family members and parents to see that impact and know what that's like and know that I don't want that for mine, you know?
Yeah. So did you pursue your career in the mental health field while you were going through all this stuff then?
Yeah, because it all resonated. I mean, I could
Okay.
keep it into like being a weekend piece. I mean, who goes in grad school and just goes and starts ripping drinks at the bar, like in between classes, you know? So that's one of the things where it's like, because I could relate to it and because I could kind of see this and what was going on and wanting to get a better understanding of it. And I could always project it and it's like, oh no, this is just having fun. This is just what it's about. And I hung around, I associate with people that had that same mantra, that same idea. And I worked in the restaurant industry. And so the restaurant industry, it's notorious for this. So it was just feeding this lifestyle and this same pattern that, you know, was just destructive.
Was there, like in my case, in my interview last week, you know, it was that aha moment of that gentleman coming in and speaking at the facility, and you know, he was an opiate addict in recovery or heroin addict in recovery, and for whatever it was, whatever he said, it just resonated with me. It gave me hope and inspiration. Was there working with a patient, or was there anything in particular that was your aha moment that said, "This is it. Enough's enough. I got to get myself clean and sober"? It sticks in your mind.
Oh yeah. So there was a time where we were having people over to our place. And so the host, myself, you end up indulging a little too much. And there's no pacing. Like people are like, oh, you just need to pace yourself. I have no idea what that even means. My goal is how can I achieve that feeling? How can I get there as quick and as fast and as effective as possible? I don't care what it takes or how I'm getting there, but I'm going to get there. And what that led to is now your host is in bed. This party started at 9:00 and they're upstairs being put to bed at 10:30 at night. What is going on here? Yeah. And just, I remember that conversation like the next day being like, like just the amount of guilt, remorse, and just overall there's like this washed over feeling of just like shame of just being like, what the hell? Like, how did I let this get here? And I just remember always being like, I should probably go back to a meeting. Because I went to a few of them, right, for classes and checked a couple of them out here and there. And it always worked. I liked what I heard. I liked the message. But I never consistently attended. Man, like that idea and the fact that I'm like, hey, if I'm getting myself in this position where this is what's coming out of me and this is what I have to lose, like I just can't let this go. I just can't let this keep going down this same path and act as if like everything's fine when I know in my mind, I'm like, not just like not being the person that I want to be showing up as in this world. I'm also not showing up as the partner that I need to be that really communicates like, I really care about you. Because I can't say I care about you and still keep doing this behavior. Like that, just like this double life. Like there's people that I've known, like I could do it for a period of time, but long term, it destroys me. Just absolutely destroys me. I remember like one point being in a place where I'm like, do I even want to like be alive right now? Right? Because like I always ask people, you ever get to that point where you just start, you get to the point where you're just like, I don't even care if I wake up tomorrow. Like if I wake up tomorrow, like so be it. Or waking up and be like, oh, I'm still here. That's where I found myself all too often, man.
And when you ultimately got sober, was that difficult for you? I mean, did you have to work a program? Was it going to meetings? Did you have to get a sponsor? What did that look like?
So I just dive in. It's going to sound really healthy. I just really dive into my partner because like really being like open, honest, and transparent and sharing that. I think the biggest challenge is me like socially. I think that was always a big thing. Like they always say like, hey, change playgrounds and playmates. Well, people that were used to me going out and just being wild. And it's like, you're not going out. I'd get calls like in the middle of the night, like, hey man, I miss you. Where are you? Yeah. And these are like from my buddies. And I'm just like, why are you calling me? Like, dude, I'm sleeping. But it was just this like, all of a sudden now we're like passing ships in the night and values change, right? Like that's what always keeps coming back to my head. I'm like, the values and like my priorities and the things that I wanted wouldn't be possible for me to really show up for if I kept this lifestyle going. And so like that was where I had to have like this really like this honest like soul searching like personal inventory like with myself and saying this is a lifestyle choice that's not working out. Like this, like I can't go down this. And so turning into my partner, exercise, like because I got that obsession. The obsession's always there. And me and my buddy always talk about it. And I mean, same guys like, hey, I had to go and join multiple gyms because some are open 24 hours, some are open on holidays, some are like nationwide. You just never know where you're going to be when you need it. And so for me, that was the one thing that working out and like really anything physical was where my mind went. And so those things I would say were like just crucial for me to kind of be where I am today. And especially like, it's like I had to just check myself on a regular basis where it's like, look where it's got you. Like this almost cost you your life. Like you almost don't know how to spell your name. You can recognize your father in the emergency room. Like what kind of life do you really want for yourself? Like, cause that was like great. Like you got family showing up to support you. Cause like that image is like ingrained in my mind because when I was in that accident, I was like 133 pounds, same size as I am now, which is about 50 pounds less than what I am. I'm just like, I just look at that picture and I throw all those pictures out too, because that's just how I operate, man. I don't want to see this. Like I got it in my head. I know what it was like, but I was just, you look at that picture like this dude's not doing well.
And I think a lot of people, like when they're living a life of recovery like you are and myself, you know, when you're dealing with somebody that's still battling an addiction of any sort, you know, they think that it just seems daunting, you know, all the things that they have to do. You know, they got to change their daily habits. They got to change their circle of friends. You know, they have to attend certain meetings and so forth. And I always make the comment about how, you know, it takes 20, 21 or 22 days, I've heard, for it to become a habit and 100 days for it to become a lifestyle. But what's interesting is a lot of things just morph. If you do the right things just happen. Okay. Your circle of friends changes. Okay. Your lifestyle changes. It's not like you got to go check. Things just happen naturally. Would you say that that's what happened with you?
I would say that's a great way to put it, where it's like they say, right, just keep doing the next right thing. And I think that was the thing where it's like, hey, the people that like I needed to surround myself, like made themselves present for me. The people that really like, and that's part that hurts, right? Like these relationships aren't as deep as you might believe that they are. I'm like a really relationship kind of guy. So for me to be like, oh man, I thought we were deeper than that. I thought like you really genuinely cared about me as a person, not just me as this like your buddy to kind of go out with. Yeah. And so like that stuff stings.
You find out real quick, that's for sure.
Uh-huh. And that's where it's like, you know what? It's like, I guess I'm better for finding that out now. You know what I mean? Where it's better for finding that out now and just kind of seeing it for what it is versus what my mind is telling it is. And And that was kind of like some of the big things. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I want to be successful. Cause like I found myself during the time of all this going on with my accident. Like I tell people all the time, like you find yourself kind of like lowering that bar. Like, what do I want for myself? Well, I want this. Like, this is where it starts. Like, I want to be this kind of guy, and this is what I'm going to do. And then the more you're kind of like caught up in it, it's like, maybe I'll settle for this. You know, maybe I'll be okay with just this. But it might be going like, I want to get a doctorate to, maybe I just want to get a master's to like, I just want to get a bachelor's. You know what? I'm just going to get an associate's degree from my junior college, and I'm going to call it a day because that seems like the path that's the least resistance and is going to take the least amount out of me in this process. And it could be like any example, but that's what we find ourselves doing is just lowering that bar constantly. And it's like, hey, I'm not just like selling other people in my life short by like not being the person that I need to be, but I'm also really selling myself short, and this sucks. And I really got to kind of take charge and do something different here. So I dove into college like full throttle, attending universities that I'd say I would never attend because growing up in Naperville, I'm just like, I'm never going to friggin' Benedictine University. It's right down the street from my house. Like, I got to get out of town. How am I supposed to have this college experience? Yeah. I'll tell you, like, I went back there and just dove in head first and was like taking 18 credit hours, like a semester. And in like in a year and a half, I was able to graduate with whatever credits I had accumulated throughout like the other like 4 schools I attended because I just started transferring schools too. Like, it was just hopping. It just hop. Like, I just fought stability at its core. And so like, that's when things started feeling like actually achievable. And I had a teacher pull me aside and saying like, Justin, like for what you want to do and like the kind of guy that you kind of are, you really need to go to graduate school. You got to get your master's in psychology and counseling to really kind of do and carry that work. And like, I'm forever grateful. She gave me that advice and like pulled me aside and talked to me because without her, I don't know if I'd really be here.
Yeah. And again, that's not something that was a career ambition of yours early on. It just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of everything that you went through with your live life experience, you're getting sober, all that stuff.
Right.
So talk to me about the work you do, how you feel about the impact it's making on others, and how that helps you stay in check and actually keeps you sober.
Yeah. So I think that's where, because I think that's a great question, man. Because it's like, it's personal. It's really personal. And I always tell people like, hey, the work you do, like, is you're a therapist, you're a helper. You're not this like void of emotion, non-reactive individual. Like, that's just not who we are. You got your own stuff. You bring your own stuff in the room. Your own stuff's going to kind of come up. And really that's where like passion comes from for people, is because it's really personal. And so for me, like, I love working with like adolescents and young adults because in my mind, I'm always like, I get it. I get it. And it's like, as much as I might try to use their lingo and think that I'm really cool, I like just do that, throw in their face, but like, this sounds awful. And I just want you to know how awful it sounds when you're saying the word lit. Like, it doesn't sound cool, bro. But that's where you see people making lifestyle choices at this time because they're trying to deal with something internally going on or trying to fit in or trying to figure out who they are. And I think that's where you see this great opportunity for people to kind of get on a different path and not have to use substances or any of these other acting out behaviors that you're trying to feed your ego or escape being yourself. Because I've talked, like, you talk with so many people, it's like, I get it. It's a great reminder of like where I was and like why I was doing and what I was doing. And it's not always about feeling better, right? It's always about like, hey, sometimes I just want to feel less. I just want to feel less. And I got this great outlet to do it. And I'm just avoiding this very thing that I know when I come back to being me, it's going to be right there staring at me. And then I'm going to falling back in that same trap each and every time. And so I need to figure out, how do I just stop running? How do I stop digging this hole that I find myself in and actually just learn to accept who we are and figure out who actually am I? Because that's a terrifying thing to do, is to kind of wrestle with that inner demon and being like, do I actually like this person? Would I actually want to be around this person? Right? Like, that's a tough pill to swallow when that answer is no.
Oh, I agree. Unfortunately, we're getting short on time. We could sit here and talk for hours about this. We have talked for hours about this offline. But I've learned a lot about your story today that I really was not aware of, so I appreciate you taking the time and kind of explaining everything a little bit more in detail. I think our audience is going to obviously enjoy, what you had shared with us as well. So again, thank you very much. I do want to share that we do have sharing stories is really an important part of recovery. You know, you've heard my story and you've heard Justin's story over the last couple of weeks, and we're going to share more stories as we progress with this podcast. But I do want to also bring everybody's attention that NAMI DuPage actually has a story map on our website, which we will be linked to show notes that listeners can check out to read about others living with the mental health condition throughout DuPage County. And I think that's actually pretty cool. Our next topic for our next podcast is actually going to be about supporting a loved one that is living with a dual diagnosis. Okay, so we're actually going to have a guest besides Justin and myself that's actually going to talk about living with a loved one, a family member of theirs that has a dual diagnosis and what they do to support that individual and so forth. So I'm really looking forward to that. We're also happy that you're joining us on these podcasts. They're going to air on the 15th and the 30th of each month. So make sure that you tune in to the NAMI website and view them. If you have any closing comments, Justin, I welcome them. Otherwise,
yeah, no, I
look forward to everybody, joining us for the next podcast.
Definitely. I think just genuinely appreciate everybody taking time to kind of get to meet who the host of this show are and a little bit of our stories and really understand that, like I tell people all the time, when you go into this field, especially when you're working with an individual, presenting with a dual diagnosis or just pure working with addiction, right? Like there's a personal reason driving that. There's a call that you're answering when you show up to be of service to somebody who's really being impacted. And I think that's one of the things that is really just admirable, especially Mark, about the work that you do, man, kind of going to the hospitals and really kind of being open and vocal about your story and the cost and like the steps that you've taken to kind of reclaim your life, man. And I also want to share with everybody that, hey, Mark and I are really open to any comments and any suggestions that people might have. And so if there's things that you hear in the podcast that really resonate with you or something that you think would be a great topic for Mark and I to discuss in an upcoming episode, feel free to share that information with us. And that can be shared at namidupage.org/podcast. And that will get directly to us so we can make sure that we are really staying up to date and speaking on things that are really relevant that people want to be talking about. Because that's what this is about. It's really looking at how can we really kind of dive into these areas that are impacting everybody's day to day and really give some tools, some knowledge and support during those times. And so, again, just want to thank everybody here for being here. And Mark, fantastic job. Appreciate you interviewing me like a seasoned vet.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing everybody next time. Till then, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Take care.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. If you're on the journey to find guidance and insights, subscribe now wherever you find your podcasts. Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery is an educational resource, not a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of NAMI DuPage. Go to namidupage.org/podcast for links to past episodes, show notes, and to submit a question or topic ideas for a future episode. Until next time, be well.